see that he's not going to do anything fishy other than mark his ballot papers, but also allowing him his privacy to mark his ballots in secrecy. Now he proceeds to the booth, to the ballot boxes to cast. Starts with the presidential, white in color, goes into the box with a white lid, proceeds to the member of National Assembly, green ballot paper with a box with green lid, member of a county assembly, beige with a beige, proceeds to the Senate election, yellow with yellow, proceeds to the county woman member, purple with purple, and proceeds to the governor election, blue with blue. He is then marked on his left small finger with indelible ink and is asked to leave the polling station. Thank you, mzee kwa kupiga kura. Uende nyumbani, ungoje matokeo. Mbona mko wawili? Hawezi kuona. Karibu. Patia kitambulisho chako, na hata wewe msaidizi peana kitambulisho chako pia. So they have come, two of them. One has a challenge with her sight, so she has come with her own assistant to help her to vote. The law allows that if a voter comes with their own assistant, then they'll be allowed to vote. The voter will be checked on the printed register normally by clerk number 2. Their details will be crossed out. Now, before they are issued with the ballot papers, I must do one very important legal requirement. The assistant must be of the age of majority, must have an ID card, doesn't have to be a registered voter. Then I will ask the assistant to fill this form. It's called Declaration of Secrecy form by a person assisting a voter. So that, because she will know for which candidates this voter has voted for, she must maintain the secrecy of that choice for the rest of her life. So she must sign this declaration of secrecy. Now they can proceed and receive ballot papers. The law requires that an assistant can only assist one person in the election. So you will notice that after they have voted, the voter will be marked, the assistant will also be marked, so that she cannot come back to assist another voter. And because this voter has come with her own assistant, we will allow them to go to the booth without our interference to mark and then cast the ballot accordingly. Are you a voter?
Yes.
You need to be identified first. You've been identified?
Yes.
Perfect. So both the assistant and the voter will get their ballot papers because they are both voters in this polling station. Security officer, maintain order. Only one voter to come in at a time. Well spaced, observe COVID-19 protocols. 1.5 meters between voters. So 2 ballot papers, 1 for each. Thank you. So they proceed to the booth to mark their ballot papers accordingly. They are allowed to do it in private. Now, even if the voter is being assisted, if they are able to put the ballot paper themselves, then that is how they should put in their ballot papers. But if they are unable, because maybe of a physical impairment, then they'll be assisted to put that ballot paper in the box. And because this particular voter has a seeing problem, then they might be assisted to put the ballot paper in the box. But some are allowed to fill and put, they can do so. I think there's enough space now, the next voter can. We also want to simulate a voter. Deputy Presiding Officer, please help them to put their ballot papers properly. We also want to simulate a voter who is unable to vote on their own, but they have not come with their assistant. So we have a voter here who cannot vote on her own. She doesn't have an assistant. We'll see how that is done as well. So you can see the voter is being assisted to put the ballot paper herself by the assistant. Now, when they have finished, the voter will be marked on the small left-hand finger as normal. The assistant will be marked on their thumb and the small finger as well, because he has voted and she has also assisted. So she will leave with 2 marks, one on the small finger for having voted, another one on the thumb for having assisted, so that she can come back to assist another voter. So asante sana mama, muite na watoto wenu pia wakuje. Yes, sir.
How do I do this?
You need help?
Yes, please.
This voter needs to be assisted, but he doesn't have his own assistant. So I'm going to invite agents to witness, at least 2 agents from opposing parties to come and witness. Agents, this voter is unable to read and write, so he cannot be able to vote on his own. So we are going to assist him to vote. He'll show us, tell us which candidate he wants to vote for. And mzee unajua kuandika mwenyewe?
Si nzuri sana.
Wacha nikusaidie kuandika. Unataka nani kwa hii president?
Huyu.
Huyu? Agents, have you seen that mark for that voter?
Yeah.
Okay. Kwa hii ya mbunge, unataka nani?
Huyu.
Agents mnaona? Huyo. Hii ya MCA unataka nani?
Hapa.
Huyu agent mnaona? Ndio hiyo. Hii ya senator unataka nani?
Huyu ndio mtu wangu.
Huyu ndio mtu wako? Agent mnaona? Ndio hiyo. Hii ya mama mbunge unataka gani?
Na wawili.
Wawili? Unaweza pigia mmoja tu kwa sasa.
Okay.
Huyu. Agents mmeona hii? Na hii ya governor unataka nani?
Governor. Utaki hawa? Yeah.
Utapigia yote.
Kuna mwingine?
Wewe ndio unachagua.
Okay. Okay. Basi
hapa. Agents unaona hiyo? Asante. Sasa utachukua hizi kura zako. Utaenda kwa masanduku pale.
Okay.
Na utaweka agents. Tafadhali mrudi kwa viti zenu. Thank you, agents. So he proceeds to the boxes. Mzee utaweka kulingana na rangi ya ballot paper na kifuniko cha sanduku la kupigia kura. Hakikisha zimeenda kulingana na rangi yake. Kama uko na shida utaniambia nikusaidie kuweka kwa sanduku la sawa.
Sasa hii na hii
hapa hii ni ya pale mwisho.
Okay.
Chukua hii hapa. Hii ndio hapa. Ndio. DPO msaidie. Mpigaji kura mwingine tafadhali. Naona huyu ni mjamzito na mmemwacha asimame. Mngemwacha apite mpaka mbele, asisimame sana. Mama mjamzito mnamruhusu aingie mbele. Asante. So this voter is expectant, heavily expectant. We give them priority voting so that they are able to come in. Pardon? You are unable to identify?
So I have to do the name.
You've not been able to?
Yes, it's not
Yes. These voters, biometrics, have not properly identified her. So we are going to use the complementary mechanism for identifying her. So we will use her ID number as alphanumeric search to see whether the device will produce her details.
I'm still unable to see her.
You are unable to see her?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if we are able to do that, before you proceed to the register, we will do one small thing. We will take a picture of you holding your ID card using the device. Then I will authenticate with my fingerprint that I've taken her image, and then she'll proceed to the printed register. Check out. Kasioka? We'll proceed. So she's been identified on the printed register, but we've also taken her image. She proceeds. If we had not found her details at this level, and on the printed register she's not found, then this voter will not vote. She will go home. Because whatever is in that device, if the alpha search does not bring out the details, then this voter is not registered. Because what we have in the printed register and the device, they're exactly the same register. But because we found her details, she's able to proceed to vote. Now, because her biometrics did not identify her, we've taken her image to make sure that we cannot have an imposter vote, because we have her image taken on the device. So she proceeds to vote normally. Please, next voter.
Hapana. Mimi nimechoka hapa. Kwa nini? Hapana. Nimechoka hapa.
Askari, shikilia huyu mtu.
Nimeshinda hapa nje. Sasa mimi nimechoka hapa. Hapana.
Hebu tafadhali askari, kidogo tu. You've seen a rowdy voter being handled by the security officers. Now, if I assess him and see that although he's a little bit tipsy but he can vote, I may allow him to be given priority voting so that he votes and goes home. He doesn't become a nuisance to the other voters. But if he's so much unruly, he will be put aside until he sobers up. We still have all the way to 5. By 5 p.m. he will have sobered up. We'll allow him to come again and vote. Now, in order to have a faster flow of voters, once a voter receives ballot papers here, the next one can come for identification. Once a voter starts receiving ballot papers, the next one can come for identification, so that we have a smooth flow of voters at our polling station. Now, at every 2-hour intervals, as a presiding officer, I will be sending updates to the returning officer on voter turnout. We send an update at 9 a.m. on how many people have voted, how many are registered in this polling station, and we compute the percentage voter turnout, and we send that report to the returning officer. We do it at 9, we do it at 11, we do it at 1, we do it at 3, and finally we do it at 5. Iko shida gani mzee?
Mimi nimesahau ID yangu.
Umesahau kitambulisho wako? Itabidi urudi nyumbani ukachukue.
Ilipotea jana.
Ilipotea jana? Basi nenda utafute tu. Tunafunga kituo saa 11. Ukiweza kupata kitambulisho kabla hiyo saa, kimbia hapa. Utaruhusiwa kupiga kura. Pole sana mzee. Nenda utafute kitambulisho chako.
Hapana, kwa sababu niko hapa, mimi nilikuwa registered hapa.
Lete kitambulisho, hiyo ni sheria inataka ulete kitambulisho, tukutambue kwamba ni wewe, alafu kuruhusu. Bado uko na masaa mzee. Si uko na wajukuu, unaonekana kuna wajukuu wengi sana. Waambie wakusaidie kutafuta kitambulisho, alafu urudi. Asante sana mzee. Cameraman, kuna mmoja anataka kupiga kura? Please join them. Take ballot papers and vote. It's free for all voters, provided you are registered here. Okay. So once he's receiving ballot papers, the next one can come for identification, so that we have a smooth flow of voters in the polling station. Yes.
Mimi nataka kuvote president peke yake, ingine shika.
Tulia kidogo.
Mimi sitaki candidate ingine, nataka tu.
Sasa
hili sitaki rudisha.
Ngoja kidogo mpigaji kura. Umeweka alama kwa hizi zingine?
Sitaki.
Na umeweka alama hii ya rais. Sasa kuja nikuonyeshe vile utafanya. Weka hiyo ya rais hapa kwa sanduku.
Hii tu ndio nilikuwa natafuta.
DPO msaidie kuweka hizi zingine kwa masanduku yake.
Lakini sijaweka alama
Haina shida mzee. Weka tu, lazima zirudi kwa masanduku yake. Sio hiyo, sio hapo. Hapana. Hii hapo, weka hii.
Unajua mimi sitaki hata.
Now this voter wanted to vote for only one election. So he wanted to give back the remaining 5 ballot papers to the presiding officer. But the law does not allow that. We cannot have them open here. So we ask them to put them in the respective ballot boxes, so that at the end of it, we are able to account for every ballot paper. But because they are not marked, during the count, those ballot papers will be rejected. But at least we are able to account for every ballot paper that has been issued to that voter. We have a problem here? Yes, what's the problem?
He says that he only wants...
Askari, please urudisha wengine nyuma, tunataka wengine moja moja. Rudi nyuma tuingie moja moja. We cannot crowd a polling station. Yes, tuje moja moja, one at a time. Yes. Tupigia deputy president. Deputy president ameunganishwa na presidential candidate. Kwa hivyo utachukua hiyo ya rais, utaona ndani deputy president, utaona ndani president candidate. Kwa hivyo chukua tu. This voter wanted to vote for the deputy president. Since it's a joint ticket, the ballot paper has both the details of the candidate and the running mate. So that ballot paper should be able to surface. Do you have a problem here?
Yeah.
Yes.
I lost my card. I lost my card.
Your ID?
It lost somewhere.
Where?
I don't know.
Please go. We'll give you an askari to help you look for it.
Okay.
When you find it, you will allow
I
it
will
to come back.
Okay.
You're welcome. Just look for it. We are still open up to 5. Come in good time. We'll allow you to go.
Nimekuja sasa. Nimekuja sasa.
Eneo mguu mmoja.
Pombe zimeisha. Pombe
Eneo mguu mmoja.
niko sawa.
Uko sawa sasa. Unaweza endelea. Karibu sana. This voter is now okay. He's sober. We allow him to vote. So it is now 3 p.m. I'm sending my next update to the returning officer on the voter turnout at this time. I'm also doing a check on the number of ballot papers that I've issued to the voters during this process. So it is now 10 minutes to 5. We are just about to close the polling station at exactly 5. It is now 5 p.m. I will stand at the entrance of this polling station and say I, Albert Kuru, being the presiding officer of Bomas polling station, declare the polling station closed at 17 hours on 9th August 2022. Askari, simama hapo nyuma, hakikisha hakuna mpigaji kura mwingine anaingia. I will count the number of voters who are in the queue at the time of closing the polling station. I see that I have only one voter. I will record that in my polling station diary. As I closed the polling station at 5, there was one voter in the queue. By law, we should allow any voter who is in the queue at the time of closing the polling station to vote. So the last voter has come in to vote. It's being checked.
Summarize the process from opening to closing. Let me take questions and answers.
So as you can see how the voting process starts, we start by sealing the ballot boxes before 6.
Mimi si raia na nimepewa, kwa hiyo hawakuangalia. Sio raia na nimepewa.
Askari kuja na kuwa huyu.
I am not a citizen, but I have passed through the process and I have been given a ballot paper.
Nyakuwa huyu, ballot paper lete basha. Askari weka pingu huyu. Clerk yule alipitisha huyu. Chukua huyu pia, lete hawa wawili. Why did you clear a voter without valid Kenyan documents? Arrest. No, come round. I want to give you some money. Please take her up. DPO, please sit down at her position. You'll be clerk number 1. Because this clerk has tried to do what is illegal, we've had her arrested. The imposter is also arrested. I've replaced the clerk with my deputy presiding officer so that voting will continue as we process those criminals using the provided legal mechanisms. So polling can never stop, but I will record that in my incident page in my polling station diary because that is a major incident. So I will record it in the incident section of my polling station diary. So voters will come in one after the other, depending on the scenario. You saw the different scenario. A voter who is identified biometrically and is allowed to proceed, receive ballot papers, mark the ballot papers, put them in the box, they get marked on their fingers, and they leave. A voter comes in, unable to vote on their own, but they have their own assistant, they are allowed to go through the process. Both the voter and the assistant must be marked on different fingers so that they cannot come back, either to vote again or to assist another voter. We've had a case of a voter who came in, could not vote on their own, they did not have an assistant. We invited agents to witness that process. You saw the issue of a criminal coming in, come here, you need to mark your finger. You have decorated fingers, so we are going to mark you between the fingers here. A voter who has decorated fingers will be marked this section between the forefinger and the middle finger. And the assistant who has decorated nails will also be marked between the thumb and the forefinger. So either way, we must mark that voter or assistant as evidence of having voted. So I said during the voting process, we send regular updates at 2 hours intervals to the returning officer so that the returning officer can monitor whether the voting process is smooth or whether the numbers are something that he might want to investigate. So every 2 hours, we close the polling station at 5. If there are still voters in the queue, we allow them to vote. Immediately the last voter has voted, then I will seal the apertures of all the ballot boxes. DPO, come and seal these boxes. We will record the serial number of the seal used to seal the apertures of the respective ballot boxes. What we do next is we collect all these materials that were used during the polling and use ballot papers, the marked register, all these rubber stamps for IMBC that were used during the poll. We put them in packets and seal them because they have no role during the count. We don't want to have naked ballot papers during count. That's when the issue of stuffing of ballot papers or ballot box comes in. So we must seal every unused ballot paper, the counterfoils of the used ballot papers, the printed register, and all materials that will have no role during the count will be put in sealed packets in tamper-proof envelopes. So that is the voting process. Any questions? You can take one here. Yes, please.
My name is Gatete Njoroge from Citizen TV. I have 2 questions.
Yes, Gatete.
Polling station need to have a maximum of 700 voters.
Correct.
Let's say you open at 6 a.m.
Yes.
And by 8 a.m., all the registered voters at that polling station have casted their vote.
8 a.m.?
Yes.
Yes.
You close that polling station. And my second question, what circumstances can you close a polling station? Can we talk of a case of maybe an attack in that area? Are there circumstances that can make a polling station be closed on the election day?
Thank you. Whether all voters have voted before 5 or not, the polling station remains open until 17 hours in the evening. That's when we will close the apertures of the ballot box and proceed with the rest of the count. Yes, the law provides that voting can be suspended where there is an incident that takes place that may threaten the voting process, the election materials, the election officials, or the voters who are in that polling station. What we do if there is such an incident, let's say an attack or a natural disaster, we immediately seal all the ballot boxes using IBC seals. We secure all the election materials and the safety of the election officials, and then we notify the returning officer at the constituency tallying center via a phone call that there's a problem and we are suspending voting. The askaris present, the police officers will also secure the material, the officials and voters, and then we will record in our polling station diary that incident, and then we will monitor the situation. If everything comes back to normal, then the presiding officer will declare that voting is resuming. We'll record the time that it's resuming. We see how much time we had closed that polling station. We must make up for that lost time after 5 p.m. So yes, the law provides for circumstances where voting can be temporarily suspended. Yes, please.
My name is Leila Mohammed from NTV. In the past, we've seen the voter's card being a critical document for the voting process. But as of now, you speak of only the ID, the national identification card, and the passport. For clarification of those voters who still believe the voter's card is important, can you talk to that?
Thank you for that question. The law recognizes two documents for identifying a voter at the polling station. One, it is the national identification document, the document that the voter used to register as a voter. And secondly, it is a Kenyan passport that the voter used to register as a voter. Whether it has expired or not, provided they have that passport, they also come with the current passport to show that they are still citizens of this country, but we shall use the document that they used to register as a voter. So the voter's card is no longer there in law. What we give voters is an acknowledgement slip. It's a receipt, which is a token to show that this voter has been registered, but it is not a requirement during voting. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm one of the international observers. I would like to ask if somebody puts to put the wrong ballot box or vote, what will happen at the end of the day when you are tallying the vote? And the second question, it relates to the what Madam was asking. What causes the biometric voter? The system didn't recognize technically what causes vote. We have seen the case now. A lady, she came and the system didn't recognize her biometric. So what do you think that it may happen during the election? Is that a big number? Those who the system didn't able to recognize their biometric features? That's a two question.
Thank you. It is possible for someone's biometrics to wear out depending on the nature of work they do. That's why we have the complementary mechanism where we can use an alphanumeric search. We search with the ID number. If indeed they are registered voters, their details will be displayed on the KIM's tablet, and then we'll proceed with them normally. Because what we do is, at a polling station, we have 700 voters maximum. So when the voter brings their biometrics first, we're actually comparing that fingerprint with 7,000 other fingerprints, including 9 of her own. So if the biometrics don't identify her, we use the alphanumeric search. So if their details are displayed, the system will prompt for her biometrics again 3 times. In the second run, we are comparing her fingerprint with her 10. So the chance of identification is much higher, because in the first instance, we were comparing a fingerprint versus 7,000. Now we are comparing a fingerprint against 10. So there's a higher chance for the voter to be identified. But still, if they are unable to be identified biometrically, but their details have been displayed on the register, then we know this is a registered voter, and therefore we process them normally. Yeah, but those cases are normally a minority. In previous elections, there have been very few, but there's a process in which we can handle any scenario that unfolds during voter identification.
Oh, I have 2 questions. One, in your consistent updates, you mentioned that there shall be an assistant to the polling station for the people with PWs. In this scenario, we saw a voter coming in with an assistant.
Yes.
So second question is a concern from the citizen. The imposter and the clerk who are arrested just minutes ago are still loitering around.
Thank you. Yes, the law provides that a voter can come with their own assistant, and we encourage that because the secrecy of the vote is between the voter and a trusted assistant. So we encourage that a lot so that the secrecy remains between the voter and their assistant of choice. But in the event that they have not come with an assistant, they will still be able to vote, assisted by the presiding officer, witnessed by agents, to make sure that the choice of the voter is respected.
So does it mean that the presiding officer understands the sign language and all the difficulties that are involved?
Presiding officers may not understand all the sign languages, but such voters, we encourage them, and we've been very consistent in our voter education that anyone with an impairment of any nature, they should come with someone who understands their language so that they can be assisted by that person, either a family member, a colleague, or someone who can help them to vote in secret. Yes, thank you. Yes, sir.
I saw an instance where a voter who is not able maybe to read or see or all that comes with an assistant.
Yes.
Then you said that the assistant will also be marked to vote at the same time as the voter, he or she, is assisting. Is that right?
Yeah, it depends. If both the assistant and the voter are registered in that polling station, and they actually inform the presiding officer that they're both registered, they both will be treated as voters. But when they proceed to the booth, they will mark as a pair, one assisting the other. They will put their ballot papers in the ballot box as expected, and then the voter will be marked on the small left-hand finger as having voted. The assistant will be marked twice, on the small left-hand finger because they have voted also, and secondly on their thumb because they have assisted a voter. So with the mark on their small finger, they cannot come back to vote again. With the mark on their thumb, they cannot come back to assist any other voter in this election.
Then you talked of the signing of the form of secrecy.
Yes.
Does this also apply to agents? In that case where you have agents, yes.
Witnessing.
Yes.
Yes.
Does it also apply to the agents?
Yes, for the assistant, they will sign a declaration of secrecy form. We call it Form 32. A declaration of secrecy by a person assisting a voter. Agents must take an oath of secrecy before they are admitted into a polling station. So all participants in the poll process must take an oath of secrecy, including the presiding officers, the deputies, and the clerks. All of them must take an oath of secrecy. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, my name is Ibrahim from the Standard. When you are talking about the regular updates to the RO,
yes,
you talk, the purpose actually you say is to find out whether the voting is smooth or there's a problem that requires investigation. So what is this investigation and who does it? Secondly, I just want you to take us through how many kinds of ballots do we have? Rejected, stray, spoiled, burning. I mean, can you just explain what each means so that we don't use them interchangeably? Then the last question for me is, as the media, at what time do we have that, the idea of knowing the total number of the votes cast so that we start tabulating about the possible 50 plus 1%? I think in the past we have been groping up in the darkness, talking about a possible around one win when we do not know what mathematicians call coefficient, but we keep on talking about 50 plus 1. So at what point do we get the total number of votes cast so that we know somebody is edging closer to 50 plus 1? I hope you understand.
To the first question, the regular updates. Remember, this election is being supervised by a returning officer, but conducted on his behalf by presiding officers at polling stations. So the returning officer needs to know the pattern of voting to check whether it is flowing normally. Where there is a slow process, they may want to find out why it's slow, whether there are technological challenges in that polling station, and also if the numbers are abnormally high compared to the estimated number of voters per let's say a voter takes 5 minutes, and then in 1 hour you have 500 who have voted. That becomes suspicious. So it helps the returning officer to monitor whether voting is taking place normally, so that he can take appropriate action as necessary. The other question you've asked about media getting access to information. There are different levels at which the result path moves. One, there's the polling station, then there's the constituency tallying center, and then the county tallying center for county elections, and the national tallying center in the case of a presidential election. Now, results are processed, announced, and declared at each level. So for you to get final results, you must be located at an appropriate tallying center. What you will get at a polling station are the results as declared by the presiding officer in that polling station. So as media persons, you may need to aggregate from all the polling stations in the countries for you to get that data. There are 46,229 polling stations in the country, so you need to have access to all those results for you to aggregate nationally. At the constituency tallying center, the returning officers will collect those results accordingly. They will collect presidential election results from Form 34A into Form 34B. They will also collect similarly in Form B for the other 5 elections. For the elections of a member of National Assembly and member of County Assembly, they actually declare those results and issue certificates to the winners at the constituency tallying center. So those results are concluded there. For the other 4 elections, the election of governor, they collect the result into Form 34B. For the county elections, they will collect for governor elections Form 37B. For the Senate election, Form 38B. For the county woman member to the National Assembly, they will collect in Form 39B. Now, Form 34As from all the polling stations in a constituency, together with their collation Form 34B, will then be transmitted physically by the returning officers to the National Tallying Center, where they'll be delivered to the chairman of the commission, who will then do the final tally for the presidential results. So the chairman is the one who will do the 50% plus 1. He will also do the percentage votes scored by each voter in the 47 counties to establish whether any of them has garnered 25% in at least a majority of counties, that is 24 counties. Now, armed with these results, then the chairman will make a determination whether there is a winner in the first round of the election. If there is, then the chairman will declare the president-elect and issue a certificate to the president-elect. If in the results, the chairman establishes that none of the candidates has met the threshold of 50% plus 1 vote, and 25% in at least a majority of counties, then the chairman will declare appropriately that a fresh election will be held within 30 days from the date of the declaration of that election result. So the media can only move at the pace at which the result path is moving, from polling station to the constituency tallying center and to the national tallying center in the case of the presidential election, or the county tallying center in the case of the county elections. It is important to emphasize that media can only compute for their own consumption and to the public, but they cannot purport to declare who has won the presidency or any other seat for that matter. Thank you.
The question of the ballot.
Yeah, you are a very sharp person. You are moving ahead of the teacher. We've not even counted. It is during the count that we establish the votes you described. When we have opened a ballot box, and I wanted to demonstrate very quickly how we close and count, then the votes will come out. But I could explain them very briefly what they are. Now, during the count, a ballot paper that has been marked appropriately for a particular candidate, we call that a valid vote, and it will count in favor of that particular candidate in that election. During the count, we may also establish a ballot paper that has a number of features as anticipated in law that will make it inadmissible to be counted. Such a ballot paper will be rejected, and it will be called a rejected ballot. I want you to notice that I've said a valid vote and a rejected ballot. We don't have a rejected vote. It can only be a rejected ballot. A vote is one that is in favor of a candidate. Now, we reject a ballot paper based on provisions of the law. It is defined in the regulations how we reject. If you go to Regulation 78 of Elections General Regulations, you will find the circumstances under which a ballot paper will be rejected. One, if it has been marked for more than one candidate, then the intention of that voter is not clear, so we reject it. You saw a candidate who refused to mark a number of ballot papers for elections he was not interested in. Such ballots will also be rejected because they are not in favor of any candidate. They have not been marked. A ballot that also bears serial numbers that don't fall within those issued in that polling station will also be rejected. A ballot paper that does not bear the security features as given by the Commission in the specifications of ballot papers will also be rejected. So those are some of the criteria. Also, a ballot paper that is marked in such a manner that the identity of the voter is obvious, like their name or signature, such a ballot paper will also be rejected. So it will be stamped on the face with a rubber stamp called IEBC rejected. Now, the other ballot that could come out during the count is a ballot paper we call stray ballot. As you can see, the ballot boxes have unique colors for the leads and also the color of the ballot paper, and the name of the election is clearly on the ballot box. Any ballot paper that ends up in the wrong ballot box, it will be marked as a stray ballot and it will not count in that election. Another ballot that could surface during the count is a ballot that is a vote that we call disputed vote. Now, this is a vote that the presiding officer has awarded in favor of one of the candidates. They have looked at the ballot and the mark, and they have, in their opinion, they have awarded it to one of the candidates. But an agent will say that, in their opinion, that ballot should not be given to that candidate. So the presiding officer has awarded, but a candidate or agent is disputing that decision of the presiding officer. So such a ballot will be stamped disputed. But according to the law, the decision of the presiding officer will hold, although a dispute has been raised on that particular ballot. So it will be stamped with the IEBC rubber stamp disputed. But in the count, it will count still in favor of the candidate that the presiding officer had awarded it to. So those are the kind of either votes or ballot papers that could come out during the count, and each is provided for in law and it is accounted for accordingly, either in the statutory result declaration form or in the polling station diary, as the case may be. Like stray ballots are recorded in the polling station diary. Spoiled votes are recorded in the PSD, and the reason why it is spoiled. We also have a statement of rejected ballots, which is a form 41. We record the serial number of the ballot paper and the reason why it was rejected. So we account for all these ballot papers that way. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Noemi Shalom from Africa Intelligence. We've seen some very courageous askaris taking out big threats, but what if there are more people also threatening the safety of the vote? Are there also backup askaris not far able to intervene? And second, are the askaris deployed in their own polling stations so they are able to vote? Because there are 150,000, I think, nationally to be deployed, and if they cannot vote, that might also be an issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, we have police officers, armed police officers manning every polling station. We have 2 in each polling station. Now, if we have a registration center that has several polling stations, then it means we have a bigger pool of police officers. So collectively, they're able to manage the voting process as well as provide law and order outside the polling room. So yes, we do have well-trained police officers to provide security at every polling station. Yeah.
Will they vote on the site also?
It is not automatic. It depends on where they have been posted. If a police officer is registered in Mombasa and currently posted in Nairobi, and they were not posted in time for them to transfer their vote, then they'll not be able to vote. But if you are lucky to be posted at a station where you are registered as a voter, you will be allowed to vote. The same is the case for the polling clerks and every other official. If you are posted in a station where you are registered, then you will be allowed to vote as well. Yes. Yes, sir. Ndio.
Kuchukua timu nataka ngapi kwa shughuli yote mzima. Alafu swali la pili, ukitaka kwa kile kibanda alafu niweke tiki kwa mali sipo nataka ama sipo natarajia. Unajua nimekosea. Naweza rudi kwa makarani alafu nipatie kura zingine.
Asante. Kama mlivyoona muda ambao mpigaji kura, na natumai wanahabari huwa ni watu wa kuchapchap. Nafikiri mmefanya hesabu mtu amechukua dakika ngapi wale walikuwa wanapiga kura hapa. Labda takriban dakika 3 kwa kila mpigaji kura ama chini, kulingana na vile mtu anaweza kuweka alama haraka haraka na kusonga mbele. Inachelewa kidogo ikiwa tunahitaji kumsaidia. Kwa mfano tunaita agents kuja kushuhudia vile tunasaidia, inachukua muda kidogo. Lakini kama ni mpigaji kura mwenye uzoefu, anaweza kuchukua hata chini ya dakika 2. Punde ametambuliwa na amepata karatasi za kupigia kura, anaenda haraka sana. Swali lako la pili ni kwamba katika kituo ziko njia tofauti za kusaidia wapigaji kura. Kwa mfano kama umekuja na msaidizi wako, mnaruhusiwa kuenda kwa usiri, mpige kura na muendelee. Kwa hivyo hiyo huwa haina kuingiliwa. Ama ulikuwa unaulizaje? O replay ukiharibu. Asante. Mmesikia hapo nyuma nikitaja kuhusu spoiled ballot paper, si ndio? Sasa hii ni hali ambayo mpigaji kura amepatiwa ballot paper, ameingia kwa sanduku la kuweka alama na anaweka alama vibaya, njia ya kwamba that ballot paper will be rejected. Itakataliwa wakati wa kuhesabu. Kwa hivyo anafaa kuenda kwa presiding officer. Amwambie nimeweka alama vibaya na ningeomba nipate karatasi nyingine ya kupigia kura. Presiding officer atamsaidia yule mpigaji kura kwa kumpatia karatasi nyingine ya kupigia kura kwa hiyo election. Atarudi kuweka alama na ataendelea kupiga kura. Lakini ile kura ambayo ameharibu ndio ile tunaita spoiled ballot paper. lazima iwekwe muhuri wa IBC spoiled, kwamba imeharibika na haiwezi tumika wakati wa kuhesabu, wala haitaekwa ndani ya sanduku la kupigia kura, itaekwa kwa bahasha maalum for spoiled ballot papers for that particular election. Now we will record the serial number of the spoiled ballot paper. We shall also record the serial number of the replacement ballot paper. Remember, we must account for every ballot paper. Every time we issue a spoiled ballot, it means the number of ballot papers issued is more than those who are able to vote. So to account for that difference, we record the serial numbers of the replacement ballot papers for that voter. And we also record the reason why it is spoiled. Because sometimes a ballot paper could be marked properly for candidate X, but this voter wanted to vote for candidate Y. So he says, I've marked for X, but I'd wanted to vote for Y. So someone looking at that ballot paper will wonder why it is spoiled, yet it is properly marked for a candidate. So if the reason against the serial number says marked for wrong candidate, then it becomes clear that although it was marked properly, it was for the wrong candidate. So it is purely to account for every ballot paper and to remove any mischief of having spoiled ballot papers or rejected ballot papers whose reasons are not properly explained in our records. Yes, sir.
So my name is George from Slantan Foundation, part of the observation group. I have a concern for a vote to be valid inside a ballot box. It must have a stamp at the back. In a scenario that it is not stamped, because in the previous election we had similar scenarios where one of the clerks forgets about it. So how will that be handled? Then the second question is about COVID, and maybe the chair will respond to it at the appropriate time. We've been having issues about people saying that if you not have a mask, you'll not be allowed to vote. So maybe a clarification on that needs to be put out in public, so that if I'm a voter from a slum setup and I don't have a mask, I know that I still have a chance to go and vote. Thank you.
Thank you. You've appropriately put it. The chair will give the commission position on that, but I will. I say what I know. Okay. Let me begin with the first one, where you talked of stamping of at the back. Yes, it is a requirement that every ballot paper must be stamped at the back by our clerk. Now, the clerks are well trained on that particular requirement, but they also have a supervisor in the name of a deputy presiding officer and presiding officer who will ensure that those ballot papers are stamped at the back before they are issued to a voter. We've also told our voter educators to train voters to also be conscious and also turn over each of their ballot papers to confirm if they are stamped. So it's a responsibility that all of us need to carry, both staff of the commission and also the respective voters to check. But those cases in the last by-elections since 2017, we've never had a single case of a ballot paper that is rejected because of not being stamped. It is one area that we've been very thorough. We've also trained our officials during this election to make sure that every ballot paper is stamped accordingly, and we will see the result after this election. But yes, we have trained our officials very well on that particular requirement, and it has never been an issue in the last by-elections. We pray that it will not be an issue even during this election, because we've trained them well. On the issue of COVID, the commission position is that both election officials and voters should take the guidelines given by the Ministry of Health as far as the COVID protocols is concerned. So the issue of masking is not a requirement. Even us here, you can see quite a number of us are not masked and we've been allowed to come in. It will be the same case, but we are informing both officials and voters to be aware that COVID is still with us, and we take personal responsibility to to make sure that we don't expose. Like if it's on elections day and you know you have COVID, then you should properly be masked, sanitize yourself properly, minimize the interaction with other voters to minimize the risk of infection. The same case with election officials. We must take personal initiative to make sure that we remain safe and healthy, given the number of people we'll have in polling stations and also tallying centers. Thank you. Count? Thank you. Okay, after we have sealed the ballot boxes, we remember in the morning before polling, we had recorded the serial number of the ballot box and the seals used to seal the four sides of the ballot box. We will make sure that we are still dealing with the same ballot box and the seals have remained intact. Then we shall cut the four seals on the side of the ballot box. We leave the aperture seal intact because it has no interference with the poll process. Now, agents, clerks, come with your seats. Come with your seats. Now, what I will do is I will assign my team responsibilities. We shall begin with the presidential ballot box, and the other 5 ballot boxes will be put under care. Police officer, please come and keep guard on these ballot boxes and the other election materials. Take all those materials, put them in our corner there. Clerk, take all those materials and secure them. Remember, we said we must secure all these materials. Yes, that's what they're doing. They must be secured. We said we will put them in packets, sealed in tamper-proof envelopes, so that during the count, there are no naked ballot papers. The Kim's gadget is at a safe place. All rubber stamps are properly secured. The police officers are guarding the other ballot boxes that are not involved in this particular count. So take your seats here. I will assign these clerks to hold ballot papers for the respective candidates. Agents will also sit at strategic places to watch what's going on because they are witnesses of their candidates or political parties. We shall seal every opening on we are using our booth because not all polling stations have a good furniture for counting. So in such a case, we convert our polling booth into a counting table. We use masking tape to seal all openings where a ballot paper can disappear into, so that it becomes a good working surface for counting purposes. I will issue you to hold for me ballot papers for the respective candidates, and then you'll give them back to me during the count. So I'll ask my deputy to pour all these ballot papers from the box and onto the counting table. I'll ask my DPO to unfold them, because they were folded when they were being put in the ballot box, to unfold them. Just put them. Yeah, then the DPO will give them to me, put them face down. We shall move very fast to check whether they have the IEBC stamp at the back. Agents will also be checking. Stamped, 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 stamped. 100% stamping. This is what will happen even at the polling station. So we turn them over, and now I assign them to the respective clerks. agents are there to witness. They don't participate in the count. So you will handle, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. DPO you will handle for AAA candidate. You will handle for YYY. You will handle for PPP. You will handle for KKK. And you will handle for QQQ. Okay? In that order. This one, AAA. 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 QQQ. Weka kwa meza. This one, no mark. We immediately stamp it, rejected. Remember we said where there is no mark, it is. So we stamp it, IBC, rejected. This one, rejected. You can see there's a mark here, but it traverses 2 candidate sections. Are we together? So since the intention of the voter is not clear, this one will be rejected. So I shall also stamp it IBC, rejected. This one, PPP. This one, rejected, no mark. IBC, rejected. This one, AAA. This one is for PPP. Now we are done. We have our 3 rejected ballots. I will bring my form number 41, statement of rejected ballots, record the serial number of each ballot paper and indicate the reason why I rejected it. If you notice, it is the presiding officer who is rejecting, not the agents or the clerks. It is the job of the PO to reject as per the law. So I'll put these ones in an envelope marked rejected ballots for the presidential election. Then I ask my clerks to give me my bundles of ballot papers, and I begin counting from the candidate who is the first one in the ballot paper. You don't look at which bundle is the biggest and start the count from there. You start from the candidate who is the first one in the ballot. So I will count for everyone to see, 1, and then bring my tally sheet. There's form 33, candidate tally sheet. For every vote that I count, we put a mark on the candidate tally sheet. And then we continue. Once we reach a bundle of 50, we tie them up with a rubber band and we start counting again. So we count them in bundles of 50 and we put this in the candidate tally sheet. You can see it has 50 boxes per row and a total of 14 rows. This gives us 700 votes. So a candidate, if they score all the votes in that polling station, they will have a maximum of 700. If they score any number between 1 and 700, we shall mark the appropriate number of boxes in the candidate tally sheet. So we count, as I count, we shall be marking for AAA. Put, I said 1, put your first mark there, first box. 2, 3, 4, 5. So we record that. We shall wrap these ones in the appropriate candidate tally sheet and put them with a rubber band. They are kept for me. These are valid votes in favor of AAA. The second on the ballot paper is YYY. He has 0. So 0 for YYY. You cross all those boxes. 0 for YYY. The next one is PPP. We have some ballot papers. 1, 2. So 2, we take the 2, wrap them with this candidate tally sheet. Our third candidate is KKK. They have nothing. So it's 0 for KKK. And finally QQQ, 1. So they'll put 1 mark in the candidate tally sheet in favor of this candidate. So here we have not seen any stray ballots in this ballot box. No agent has disputed the decision of the presiding officer to award these votes to the respective candidates because the intention of the voter was very clear. So we now proceed to fill our result form 34A.
Mpiga kura upo. IEBC imeweka mikakati kurahisisha utaratibu wa kupiga kura. Uingiapo kituoni utahitajika kuwasilisha kitambulisho au pasipoti yako kwa karani wa IEBC. Maelezo yako yatathibitishwa kwenye mtambo wa KIMS. Baada ya kutambulishwa, utapewa karatasi 6 za kura zenye rangi tofauti za nyadhifa